Let me show you some advanced vocabulary and natural English to hopefully impress the IELTS examiner when you talk about your hometown. Hello, this is Keith from English Speaking Success and the website, the Keith Speaking Academy. Now, the hometown, your hometown, can be a part 1 question in IELTS. It can also be a part 2 and part 3 question, right? In this lesson, I'm going to show you first what you can talk about, and second, what kind of vocabulary and grammar you can use to give effective answers, to sound confident and impress the examiner. Throughout, I'll show you how to combine both complicated and simple vocabulary. It's really important you have both to sound natural. And I believe one of the secrets, right, of succeeding in IELTS speaking is just to speak natural spoken English. You should avoid too much complicated or overcomplicated vocabulary like this. I live in a resplendent village encompassed by altitudinous mountains. Avoid poetic vocabulary. I live in a delicate village that sits gently at the foot of a snow-capped mountain that overlooks the village like a doting father. And try to avoid cliches, you know, those memorized phrases that are overused far too much. With the development of modern technology, it cannot be denied every coin has 2 sides. Finally, as a bonus, I will try and bring all of this together at the end of the video and describe my hometown for you. So there you go. Listen, let's jump straight in. So first of all, let's talk about what you can talk about. So if you're asked about your hometown in part 1, very direct questions. In part 2, if you're asked about your hometown, you have more freedom, right? You could talk about how long you've lived there and if you still live there or if you've moved. You can talk about size. You know, is it big, small, medium-sized? You can talk about the location, where it is in the country or in relation to other places. You can talk about what it's famous for, whether that's landmarks, buildings, events, food, famous people who came from your hometown. You can talk about the locals, the people who live there, what they do, where they work. You can talk more generally about what you can do there, maybe as a visitor. And also, of course, talk about your likes and dislikes, what you hate or what you adore about your hometown. And you could talk about changes that have happened. You know, cities develop and change quite a lot. Others don't, but you could talk about that. Great. Let's have a look then at some of the language you can use to talk about these different things. So let's talk first of all about how long you have lived in your hometown. So you could say, I come from the country and I was born and bred in your hometown. So I would say, well, I come from England. I was born and bred in Manchester. To be born and bred means I was born and brought up by my parents. I was raised by my parents, right? I was educated, I was fed, etc. You could also say, I was brought up in hometown. I was brought up in Manchester. Or I was raised in Manchester. They're all fine, right? Now, if you are still living in your hometown, you can say, I have been living here. I've been living here for 20 years, right? It's the present perfect continuous because you began in the past and still live there now, right? Nice expression. I've been living here for 20 odd years. 20 odd years means approximately more or less 20 years. We use this for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and so on. Probably not for less than 20, right? I've been living here for 20 odd years. You can also say, I've been living here for the best part of 20 years. Most of that time, right? Another nice expression. If you don't live in your hometown anymore, then you could say, well, I lived there for 20 odd years and then moved to another city, right? Or I lived there for the best part of 20 years and then I moved to somewhere else, right? I lived in Manchester for the best part of 20 years and then I moved to Spain. True story, more or less. I'll tell you more later. Let's move on. So let's talk now about size and location. First of all, size, right? Of course, you can say, well, it's a small town, it's a big city, but you could make it much more interesting using some simple adverbs just to describe the adjective, right? For example, it's a pretty small town. It's a fairly little village. It's a somewhat small city. Somewhat meaning to some degree. It's a somewhat small city. It's a really big city, right? Simple adverbs, but really powerful. If it's a really big city, you can say it's a vast city or it's a sprawling city. What a great word, sprawling, sprawling city, meaning very extensive, right? Very, very large. Location, we've got north, south, east, west, depending where you're looking. So of course we can say, well, it's in the north of country. It's in the north of England. Manchester is in the north of England. Hanoi is in the north of Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh City is in the south of Vietnam. If it's the center, well, it's in the center of Dhaka is in the center of Bangladesh, right? If it's on the coast, it's on the coast. It's on the coast. If you're talking about in relation to another city or place, then it's north of, so Manchester is north of London. If the distance is close, it's just north of. Cambridge is just north of London, right? Or Cambridge is about 50 odd miles north of London. Remember? 50 odd. Great. Now, talking about different areas, we can say it's located in a rural area. So rural means in the countryside, basically. It's located in a rural area. It's a small town in the suburbs of the city, a bigger city, right? So where I live, it's a small town in the suburbs of Manchester, for example. The suburbs are the area just outside the city centre. If it's really outside the centre, then it's the outskirts. It's in the outskirts of Manchester, or it's on the outskirts of Manchester as well. If your city is on a river or in a green area, you can say it is on the river, or it sits on the river, or it is in the green belt, or it sits in the green belt. The green belt, at least in England, there's a whole green belt policy. It's about preserving green spaces. So if the area where you live or your hometown may be right in the green belt. Excellent, good. Let's move on. Okay, let's talk about what it's famous for, right? Of course, you can just say it's famous for something, right? Normally the for, we say for. It's famous for its food, for example, right? It's famous for its food. It's famous for its food. Nice. Also, it's well known for its food. Or it's best known for its food. Best known means that's what it's most famous for. It's best known for its food, right? Famous things, I mean, you can talk about food, cultural events, language or accent, industry. Maybe it's famous for a sport, for its football, or the weather, maybe, right? It's famous, Chengdu is famous for its spicy food and hot weather. If your hometown is famous, there are probably lots of tourists who go there. You could say tourists flock there or here. Remember if you're living there or not. Tourists flock there to see the famous landmark or activity. In Manchester, tourists flock there to see the football stadium, right? Or the activity. Tourists flock there to watch Manchester United lose. No, they don't. Tourists flock there to watch Manchester United play football, of course. Visitors are drawn by the football stadium or the football matches. To be drawn by is attracted by something, right? All of these we can use. You could just say the most prominent landmark is the football stadium or the landmark, right? The most prominent landmark is prominent just means the most famous and noticeable, right? The most prominent landmark in my hometown is... Excellent. What if your hometown is not famous for anything? Well, you could say, well, it's a fairly anonymous place. Anonymous just means not known, not famous. Great to talk about your hometown, right? It's a fairly anonymous place. I live in a small village. It's a fairly anonymous place. Maybe, I mean, if you think your hometown is like just really, really boring, well, say so. It's a very boring place. A nice idiom is to say, it's nothing to write home about. My hometown is nothing to write home about. Just means it's very normal, very boring, right? In terms of things to do there, you can say locals tend to whatever they do. Or locals typically go shopping. Locals just means the local people, right? You don't need you don't need people. Locals typically, right? For example, in Manchester, locals tend to go shopping and eat out in the numerous restaurants that we have there. There are so many restaurants now. Unbelievable. Anyway, so yes, what if there is nothing to do in your hometown? What if it's really, really boring? Well, move. No, don't move. You can say, there's not much to get up to. Nice expression. To get up to do. There's not much to get up to in my hometown. Nice. Of course, when describing your hometown, you need people. Can't have a town without people. You may want to talk about what the people are like. You could say, I guess most people would say, well, the local people are friendly and welcoming. Most people won't say, yeah, the local people are rude. They're rude and arrogant. Probably not. No, well, depends where you're from, but, you know. So, warm, friendly, welcoming, nice adjectives. You can talk about the industry. If there is a particular industry, where I live in Santander, a lot of people work in the fishing industry. You could say which industry is popular or commonplace where you live. There's a nice expression which you can change around, and it's a blank friendly place. It's a pedestrian friendly place, right? It welcomes pedestrians because there are no cars. It's a kid-friendly place. There are lots of parks with climbing frames and swings and slides. It's a tourist-friendly place, okay? So you can make up these phrases. Just explain why, right? Great opportunity. It's a tourist-friendly place because there's a great tourist information office. And on top of that, there's this hop-on, hop-off bus. So you can take that and you can see all the famous landmarks in one day or in one fell swoop. In one fell swoop. Great expression, meaning in one go, right? But notice, right, how you're mixing simple vocabulary and some complex vocabulary. However, please, please, please only use the vocabulary at the level you're comfortable with. Don't try and use words way above your level that you don't really know. Okay? Excellent. Let's get on the hop-on, hop-off bus to the next section. Okay, let's talk about changes because, you know, cities change, often change radically. Villages may change, then again, they may not. Either way, we can talk about changes, right? Probably here, we would use the present perfect, right? Have plus the participle. The city has changed a lot, okay? Or the city hasn't changed at all. Either way, we can talk about it. You may want to say, the skyline hasn't changed in years. The skyline of the city, is that the horizon of the city? In years, in a long time, right? The skyline hasn't changed. The skyline hasn't changed in years. You could say, new buildings have cropped up all over the city. Have cropped up. To crop up, to appear. Right? These new buildings have cropped up all over the city. A more complex expression, this is higher level, there's not a day goes by without something, an event. You know, it means it always happens. There's not a day goes by without me forgetting something. It's true. In my hometown, there's not a day goes by without a new shopping mall cropping up. There's not a day goes by without a new restaurant appearing in my hometown. Okay, that one needs a bit of practice, but that's nice. Listen, talking of my hometown, let's find out more about it. Okay, let me tell you about my hometown. So I come from England and I was born and bred in Manchester. I lived there for 20 odd years before moving out to go to university in Sheffield. Manchester's a pretty big city in the north of England. It's about a 2-hour train ride from London, north of London. Actually, the place where I'm from isn't in the centre of Manchester. I actually grew up in a small town in the outskirts of Manchester. That town isn't really famous for anything, but Manchester is. It's famous for its university. The campus has some prominent historical buildings there, and I think actually it's best known for its football, right? There are at least two big football teams in Manchester. And you get the tourists flocking to see Old Trafford and the Etihad stadiums. Whilst there's loads to do in Manchester, the town where I was raised, well, there's not much to get up to, if the truth be told. The local people are quite friendly, I guess, but I think everybody just minds their own business, right? I recently went back to Manchester and I hardly recognise the city centre. I mean, the skyline has changed so much. Restaurants have cropped up left, right and centre. But it's still a nice place. And yeah, that's the city where I grew up. So listen, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please subscribe, turn on the notifications, and listen, keep practicing. Also, remember, you can click on the link in the description below, download the PDF for this lesson, start practicing, build your confidence, and impress your IELTS examiner. And I will see you in the next video. Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.